Baby, swim.
Less than 1 year ago, I published my first book, Swim Like a Pro. It was an Amazon bestseller, and it's been amazing to meet with people all over the world who have read the book and been inspired. So my hope is to inspire you and share a behind-the-scenes look at how I wrote my own book in less than 30 days. So if you want to take that idea and turn it into a book, make sure you watch this video until the very end, and I'm even going to share a cost breakdown and how much money my book has made me thus far. Can't wait to begin, let's go. Now my book has been published on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, hardcover, and I also recorded an audiobook that I did myself. And I will say, holding the book in my hands and being able to share this with people all over the world is absolutely amazing. And knowing that just less than a year ago, this was just an idea, and now it's been read by thousands of people all over the world is truly exciting. So if you're looking to take your idea and start a book, write a book, publish it yourself, you've come to the right place. So maybe save this video, bookmark it for later as something that you can come back to. Look, writing a book is difficult. In fact, 81% of Americans feel that they should write a book. If you do the math on that, that's 200 million people. So if you're watching this video, you're not alone. And if you've come to this video, you probably fall into one of three different categories. Now, you might be someone who already has an idea for a book. Maybe you've been tinkering with this idea, you have passion and you have interest in this specific space. Maybe you've already started something. Maybe this happened a few years ago and you've been working on this, but you've never really been able to figure out how to get it done. Maybe you fall into the second camp. You have several ideas for multiple books. So you have a lot of different ideas and you don't know which one to choose. You might be thinking to yourself, can you write all of them at the same time? Maybe you've already started writing all of them at the same time, and that's okay too. Or you fall into the third category. You don't have any ideas, but you know that you want to write a book. Maybe you're passionate about writing, you have a lot of different interests, and you really don't have any direction, or you don't have any conviction. And that's totally okay, regardless of what three camps you fall in. And later in the video, I'm gonna walk through how you can actually choose what your first book idea is, regardless of which category you're in. Now, it's important up front to acknowledge that you might have some natural fears, so you don't really know how to get started. That's why you've come here. Or maybe you're afraid of the negative reviews or what people will think once you actually publish the book. Maybe you think it's going to cost a lot of money and you worry about having the space, the time, or the financial ability to support this idea all the way through completion. Or most people have the fear that they're not an expert. Now here's something that's really important to understand in entrepreneurship in general, but especially for writing a book, and that is when you're trying to write a book, or you're trying to create value for someone, you only need to be an expert to the extent that you can help someone else. So who is the intended reader? And ideally you have more knowledge than them. You don't have to be the absolute smartest person in the world or the absolute market leader in whatever it is that you're talking about. Now that doesn't hurt. All you have to do is be one step ahead of the people that you're trying to help. So hopefully that settles a little bit of the anxiety in terms of when people think I'm not an expert, how can I actually get started? Now in terms of getting started, if you're interested in entrepreneurship and taking your idea and turning it into a business or a book for that matter, make sure you subscribe to the channel because that's what I talk about right here. Again, if you find this video helpful, make sure you hit the like and also let me know what questions you have down below in the comments. Let's go ahead and get right into the 10 steps of writing a book. First step is a little bit counterintuitive maybe, but you want to find your why. Why do you want to write a book? A lot of people will just jump in. They think I already have an idea. I'm going to start writing something. And it's important to actually take a step back. So really do some self-reflection. And maybe you've already done this, but this doesn't have to take that long, but at least give yourself the time to think through, why am I writing a book? Are you doing it to develop authority in your space? Are you writing it for business? Are you trying to make money? Are you doing it for passion? Are you trying to share a story of how something has impacted you positively and now you want to share that message to people all over the world, and you look at a book, whether physical or the Kindle version, as a way that you can distribute this knowledge or this story, this information to people all over? It's really important that you write that down, because when you understand your why, you can set up a strategy that will actually follow through to the completion of the book, and it gives you a lot more focus, and that's really, really important. So once you understand your why, and make sure you write it down and draft this out, then you have to actually choose a book idea. And along with choosing a book idea, you want to create a persona or personas of people that you're trying to write to. So instead of trying to write to anyone, a general audience, it's better to have your why well understood and then to pick an audience that you're writing to. Now, when it comes to actually choosing the idea for your book, you have multiple ideas. Maybe you're toying with a few different concepts in different categories, and you're not really sure which one to pick. So the way that you actually pick the book topic is you need to understand, what are you passionate about? So what is something that you can talk about all day long? What is something that isn't really a lot of effort for you to actually put words on a paper or to speak about even? We'll talk about speaking a book. What do you get paid for? So if you were to take a step back and think, well, what am I skilled at? What have I been doing for weeks, months, years, decades? Do you have a lot of experience with that people are actually paying you real money right now to do? You can probably talk about it. You can write a book about that because you have so much natural insight because it's something that you do. Or maybe it's something that you could be getting paid for. Maybe it's a hobby and you're not paid. It's not your profession right now, but you spend a lot of time doing it and you have a lot of insight into it. And then what do people come to for you for advice? So if people are always asking you questions, so for example, for this video, people ask me, how do you write a book? How do you do it so fast? I want to be able to write a book. I have these ideas. What do I do? So for me, because I've done it, I can talk about it. So you want to think, what is something that comes natural to you? And when it comes to actually making the final decision and choosing which book that you actually write and really finalizing the idea and the title and everything like that, the answer or the question that you should really guide yourself to that solution is, which book can you write the fastest? And which book can you get done with the least amount of effort? Which book, which idea are you most likely to actually finish? It's one thing to have all these ideas. It's another to have confidence and conviction that you can actually finish that specific topic. So think about that and take a good few minutes and really think through and evaluate yourself. What are you the most passionate about? What do you have the most insight into? And really, what do you have the most conviction that you can finish? And then finally, to wrap a little bow around this, what will make you happiest? So if you have 3 different ideas and you're not really sure which one to pick, maybe you can apply all of them pretty equally in terms of effort, but one of them, you have more intrinsic value. You feel more passion. You're going to be happier knowing that you created that specific book, and that is the book that you will start first. So that's how you create your idea and you finalize which direction you're actually going to go. So that's step number 2. If you notice, there's only 10 steps, and we're already into step number 3, and now we're brainstorming topics. So now that we know the idea, now we need to think, well, what are we actually going to write about in this specific idea? So we're going to list out all of our ideas. You're probably familiar with the concept of brainstorming. You can use sticky notes, you can use a whiteboard, you can type this out on a Word document, but basically list everything possible that you think could be in this book. What would make a good chapter? What would be good sections? Maybe anything that's big or small that you want to make sure you include, that you don't forget about. Brainstorm all of these ideas. Maybe you know that you've read some articles, you've got to do some research, pull all that in, link those articles, find facts, find quotes, put it all in there and list out everything. This might take, one session for an hour, multiple sessions for multiple hours, but really plan out some time to brainstorm your topics. Now the next step number 4, is related, but it's a little bit different. You're going to create what's called a mind map. This is a book map, and it helps to do this some way digitally, or you have to write this down. You can do it on a whiteboard like I did, but you're going to create a mind map where you organize all of the ideas that you wrote down in your brainstorm, and you're going to start to group them based on theme. And this is how you're going to create your outline. So we're thinking through the steps of writing a book. You have an idea, and now you have these specific brainstorm ideas that you're going to put into that idea, and now you start to organize them, and these will be the themes. This will be parts in your book, chapters in your book, and you start to think, okay, these topics are all similar. So for me, I wrote a book about swimming, and I wanted to talk about training that you do out of the water, in the water, nutrition, strength and conditioning, injury prevention, mental mindset. These are all very diverse ideas, but I decided to create 4 different sections, and each section focus on a different type of topics. So I had one section all about swimming technique. I have one section all about things that you do out of the water. So that's strength and conditioning, injury prevention, nutrition, and all that good stuff. And then at the very end of my book, all the next steps that you can follow through with. So how do you get started? How do you do your first workout? And additional resources to follow up on. So I built a systematic flow, but that wouldn't really be possible if I didn't create my brainstorm and then my mind map. So these are very, very important steps because this really builds your foundation for the book. Now, the next step is to actually outline the book. So now that you have a mind map and you have your ideas organized into themes, just as I was explaining, you want to have all of your ideas grouped together. You want to start to create your chapters. And you're not actually writing the book yet. You might be writing sentences out. You might be creating different sections that you know you want to include. But you want to make sure that your outline is as detailed as possible, because the more detailed your outline becomes, the faster it'll be to write the book. And once you have, writer's block, and because it's going to happen to everyone, you're going to be writing and then you decide, you know what, I'm kind of burned out. I don't really know how to keep going. You just revert back to your outline, and the more detailed and structured this outline is, the easier it is to get through that book. Now, step number 6 is to actually write the book. Now, I have here, just do it, because this is so important that you actually just apply the effort, you schedule out the time, and every single day, whether it's an hour in the morning, 2 hours at night, every single weekend, whatever time you allocate, you actually make it happen. And this is much, much easier when you do these first 5 steps. A lot of people, they just skip to step number 6 and they just start writing a book. Now, you can do that, but your success rate is going to be much lower to actually complete. So it's very important that you outline the book, then you start to write it. Now, after you've written your book, I suggest you go chapter by chapter. Try not to edit while you're writing. Just spew the words onto the page. Done is better than perfect. So try and get through the chapter, and it's good enough, move on to the next chapter. Maybe you'll decide, okay, this section was in chapter 2. I decide it needs to be in chapter number 5. You can do those changes, but I would not recommend you do too much editing while you're writing. It's more important to spew the words onto the page and type as fast as possible to get your ideas through, and then you work through your editing. So when you work on editing and formatting, you want to do a full edit yourself and read through the whole book after you've actually written everything, and then you want to hand it off to a professional editor who has done this before. You don't want to hand it off to someone who's never proofread a book. And someone who's does this for a living, they know how to format the book. They know best practices. I had an awesome editor work with me on this from Upwork, and I'll go ahead and link her information down below if you guys want to use her and check out her reviews. But it's really important that you work with someone who knows what they're doing. It also helps if you work with someone who can also work on the cover design. So for me, I did a lot of the editing myself. I handed it off, and now it's time for a proofread. And then I also did a lot of the cover design myself as well, and I handed it off for some polish from the same editor. And so that's really the next step, is creating a great cover. So while the book is being edited, you should already be in progress working with a cover designer, or you're designing it yourself, or the designer is the same person who's editing your book, and they can package it all together. You want to think in terms of your cover. It needs to be simple. It needs to be basic. Don't be fancy. I even look at my cover and I think, maybe this is even too complicated. Swim, right? Swim. It's about swimming. We've got a guy swimming on the cover. Swim like a pro. I get it. You also want to think about search engine optimization within Amazon. So if you're publishing this on Amazon, you want to think about what is someone going to search if they're trying to learn. So for me, maybe Swim Like a Pro actually isn't the best search engine optimized. I'm banking on a few other things when it comes to how to swim faster, a holistic training guide. That's like the secondary title. And so people are searching how to swim faster, swim technique, swim improvement. And these are all things that are in the title and also in the keywords in the description. So these are things that you should be thinking about. Step number 9, after you've got your book, you've edited, you have your cover, you need to actually launch the book. Now, ideally, you launch not only by yourself and your friends and your family, but you have a launch team. Now, you will create this launch team actually at the very beginning when you were picking your persona. And that's why it's really important to have a good idea who you're writing for, because those are the people who are going to be the early adopters. So ideally, you're building a relationship with people before you even write the book. And this is your initial 10, 20, 50, 100 people who know that you're going to write a book. So that way, when you launch on Amazon, they will be the first ones to write you a 5-star review and also give you feedback as you head into the publish date. In terms of actually publishing the book, if you're doing it self-publishing on Amazon, you're going to use something called KDP. It's Kindle Direct Publishing. It's owned by Amazon. That's how you can actually publish the book on Kindle. And you'll also be able to get your your paperback through Amazon as well. Now, if you're looking to publish, and here's my Kindle right here, you can check out my book. It's on an iPad. You can use it as well. And then if you're interested in publishing a hardcover book, you're actually going to use a third-party company. There's a few of them out there. The one I use, which I recommend, is called Ingram Spark, and that actually plugs into Amazon. They're another publisher that's basically integrated within Amazon and other physical retailers that you can get your books. So now you can get my book on like Walmart, Target, you can get it online, which is pretty cool. And then if you want to do an audiobook, you're going to use a service called ACX. And so I hired an audio engineer when I did that, but I did that after publishing the book. So if you're doing an audiobook, I wouldn't worry about that. Worry about publishing the book itself, whether it's a Kindle ebook or the paperback. Do that first and the rest will take care of itself. And then step number 10 is to make sure you're marketing your book. Talk about it. You put blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. Make sure you travel around with it. Hand it out as your business card. That's literally what I do. When I travel, I hand this out as my business card. It's a little bit expensive for a business card, but for me, why did I write the book? Because I wanted all of these things. I want authority. I want to be able to package everything I've learned from 20 years of swimming, 10 years of coaching, and 5 years building the largest digital swimming community in the world. I wanted to put it in one spot. I've written hundreds of articles, and now it's my opportunity to solidify my space, my domain expertise in this space, and hand this out as a business card. Of course, it's passion. I love impacting people's lives, helping them swim faster and smarter than ever before, and making a little bit of cash along the way is great, but that's really the least important for me. It's all about developing the brand authority within the space and also being able to help people in one spot in a unique platform. So that's a little bit about my story and the 10 steps. Now let's get into the weeds in terms of how much it costs to actually create this thing. So when it comes to actually producing a book, I list out a few of the major expenses. Some are obvious, some are maybe not so obvious. So for me, I put the cost that I actually spent and how much you should think about budgeting, because I would say a lot of this stuff you might not have to do at all. You could do it yourself, or you could hire someone to do every single part of it. So when you think about this, the editing is probably the most significant piece that you need to have help with. You can edit the book yourself. You could have a Word document and you could upload that to KDP, and voila, the next day you have a book on Amazon. Do I recommend you do that? I do not. I'm a strong writer and I still hired additional help to have someone go through the entire book. So for me, that costed just under $500, but I would say that's a really good deal. So an average book is between 50 and 100,000 words. My book is on the lower end of that. So if you have a longer book and you spew words on the page and you didn't proof anything, the editing process is going to take longer. So I would recommend budgeting anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. In terms of my audiobook, I spent $375 on my audio engineer. His name is Stan. He was awesome. I'm going to link his information down below. Found him on Upwork as well. I would budget about $1,000 for that. Again, depends how long your book is, how proficient you are at actually reading your own words, how many mistakes you make, things like that. It could be actually a lot more than that, or about $1,000. I paid only $375. I was pretty efficient when I read it. Then if you're going to do a hardcover, you're actually going to need to purchase in ISBN. So that's the number that you have that is unique to every single book. What's interesting is that when you do a paperback or you have the Kindle, Amazon basically just creates that for you. I believe there are two different kinds of ISBN. So the hardcover is what's available in like the library, bookstore, stuff like that. And so you actually have to buy that. And I'll link all this information down below. Then when you're setting up an Ingram Spark for the hardcover, I spent $150. And you should only budget about $100 for this. I think you can actually get set up for $25 or $50. But every time you re-upload your document, if you make any changes, they charge you $25. So that's where that expense comes from. And then I also purchased a bunch of author copies for myself. So I purchased, I believe, over 100 copies of both the hardcover and the paperback, and I give this out as my business card. I used to give out swim caps and my actual business card. Now I give people a signed copy of my book, and it's a lot more valuable. People love it, and it's a great personal connection to have with me and a fan or someone who is following the journey. So I spent over $500 on author copies. You might not actually spend that much, so maybe budget, at least $100 you want to give out to friends and family potentially. And then I spent a little bit on Facebook and Instagram ads, only about $50. You can spend a lot more on advertising. If you work with a publisher, you're going to be spending thousands of dollars. You can get in front of different podcasts and things like that to market, and that could cost a lot more. So maybe budget anywhere from $0 to $1,500 there. And so that's it. I also created a course for my book. So when we think back about the media component I wrote a book, I also built an online course, and I wanted to break down some of the expenses there. So I bought the domain swimlikeapro.org. That costs $12. I use an online platform called Teachable. So I have a video for every single chapter in my book of me talking about the different concepts in swimming. And that subscription for that service is $300 per year. And then I hired, for video editing, I had some help. I spent $500 editing all the videos and collecting all that content. And that was $810 total just for the course. Now, I list out all these expenses to see how much money I spent and how much you should be thinking about budgeting. You can spend a lot more or a lot less than this. Really, the only one that is absolutely mandatory to a certain level is the editor and the cover. You want to have a really good editing done, proofreading, and you also want to have a really good cover. Everything else is really not that important. So if you want to have just the paperback and the Kindle, you can be a self-published author. You can be on the Amazon bestseller list. You don't need the ISBN for the hardcover. You don't need anything with Ingram Spark. You don't have to buy any copies for anyone if you don't want, and you don't have to spend any money on advertising. And then you're looking at anywhere from $500 to $1,000. Again, if you do everything yourself, you're really not going to spend any money on anything. If you edit a Word document and upload that, boom, you just published a book for free. So those are just some of the expenses. And then in terms of revenue, and then we're going to circle back and talk about how long you should expect to actually spend on each of these different sections. And then I have 5 tips for you guys. I know this is a long video, so thanks for pushing through here. I have 5 tips to make sure you're successful in self-publishing that book, so make sure you stick around for that. So in terms of revenue, there's a different profit margin actually for every single type of product. And this is done through Amazon. So I did mention that I have the ebook, the Kindle version. I also have a paperback, a hardcover, the audiobook, and I have the online course. So I'm going to talk about how much I charge for each of those and how much money I actually make in revenue for each of those different products, and then what that profit margin looks like. And I'll give some insight into the actual sales of which one of these is actually performing the best. So in terms of the ebook, so it really depends on how much money you charge. So I charge $9.99 for the Kindle version of my book, which you can read on a Kindle or an iPad, and that's the PDF basically that you can send to people. And the net revenue from that is $6.80. Now that's a 68% margin. So that actually fluctuates dramatically based on how much money you charge for your Kindle book. So for Kindle books priced between 99 cents and $2.98, you're going to receive a 35% royalty on each sale. That's the revenue that you're going to get. For books that are priced between $2.99 and $9.99, you're going to receive a 70% royalty on each sale. And for books above $10, the Kindle version, you're only going to receive 35%. And so that's why I chose $9.99, and you'll see a lot of ebooks or Kindle books are priced at $7.99 to $9.99 because that's where you get the 70% profit margin, and that's really the best bang for your dollar. In terms of the Kindle edition normalized pages read, which basically means if someone's already a member and they're subscribed and they get unlimited books or a book a month or whatever it is, then basically every time someone reads a page of your book, you're going to earn revenue. You're going to earn a royalty payment. I actually did the math on this, and it's about 5 cents per page is what I averaged last year. So for every time someone reads a page and they are subscribed to Kindle, and so they didn't pay the $9.99, every time they read a page, 5 cents. My book is over 200 pages, so technically if someone reads the entire book, they're actually going to give me more revenue than if they had just purchased it all by themselves. So thank you, Amazon, and thank you for buying the book. Now, in terms of the paperback, I charge $19.99 for my book, and I end up in net revenue, I get about $8. So that's a 39% profit margin. Remember, Amazon is printing the book on demand, so it's not like I have a warehouse of books or they have a warehouse of pre-published books. So it actually costs them money to print the book on demand when you go to Amazon, and as a result, they gotta print the book, they have to publish it, they have all the machinery, they have to ship it out. Amazon Prime is free shipping, and so as a result, out of $20, I'm only getting $8. I actually think that's a pretty good deal because I don't have any risk and I don't have to hold any inventory. So thank you, Amazon, for taking care of that. In terms of the hardcover, now this is the most startling for people to find out. I charge $26.95. Sometimes Amazon likes to put it on sale for some reason for like $25 or something, and I only get about $3.50 after Ingram Spark and Amazon and everyone takes their cut, which is about a 13% profit margin. It does fluctuate. All of these actually fluctuate based on the geography and the country and taxes and stuff like that. But to see it at 13% is pretty startling how poor the profit margin is on a hardcover. And that's why a lot of people don't even bother with a hardcover, because it's kind of a hassle to do and you're not going to really make any money. Most of the revenue is coming from the ebook, the Kindle, especially in the United States, and the paperback. So something to keep in mind. In terms of the audiobook, it's similar to the ebook and how many people read it or how long people are listening to it. But the audiobook is $17.99 on Audible, and I make about $4 to $4.50 every time that is purchased, which is about a 23% profit margin. And then I have the course, which I charge $9.99 for. I actually had a few different versions of the course and different price points that I tested. At one point I was charging $60 for it. I decided to settle on $10, $9.99, and I have about an 87% margin. I keep almost all of the money basically because it's an online course. So that's a little bit of insight into the actual pricing and how you can expect to make revenue. Now, I did mention that most of the revenue is actually coming from the Kindle version and the paperback, just because distribution is the easiest. That's what people are familiar with. Certainly people like audiobooks, but people are less likely to actually shell out for a hardcover of the book. There are folks out there who like that, but just know that you're not going to be making as much money despite charging more for it. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how much time you should expect. So hopefully you're excited, you're taking notes, and you bookmarked this video, you're ready to get started. How much time should you spend on each part of this? So in terms of finding your why, that should really only take anywhere from 1 hour of brainstorming. You can spend up to a week on it, but this is something that you should just be thinking about. You should be thinking about it right now as I'm talking about it. Why are you writing your book? The next step is choosing the idea. Also should take about an hour. Write out your persona. Who are you targeting to? Don't spend more than a week on this at the most, so 1 week. Then you need to start brainstorming your topics. Spend anywhere from 2 hours up to a week on this, and then you want to create a mind map. The mind map should take anywhere from 2 hours to 1 week, 2 weeks. Don't spend more time than that because you need to start outlining and actually writing the book. So all of this stuff here in the beginning, you can do in 1 day. All 4 steps you can do in a matter of hours, and then you get to the outline of the book, and that's where you want to spend more time because you're sort of pre-writing the book. You're writing out sentences, you're organizing things. You can spend anywhere from 4, 8, 10, 12 hours on this before you actually start looping the words together to build out the book. Now, writing the book is actually going to take the longest amount of time, but it will take a lot less time if you do a good job outlining and creating your mind map. So expect to spend anywhere from 40 hours to 4 weeks actually writing the book. You can do it in 1 week if you write every single day, all day. You can write a book in a week. If you're going to spend, 2 or 3 hours per day, it might take you closer to 3 or 4 weeks. If you're only going to spend 1 hour or 1 hour every other day, it's probably going to take you 2 or 3 months to actually finish the book. When it comes to editing, you're going to want to read the entire book and make sure you polish things out. That's going to take about 25 hours. And then you're going to need an editor to spend at least 25, 30, 40 hours editing. So that could take up to 2 weeks just because it's not fully dependent on you. Creating the cover should take a few hours between whether you're designing it. If you're designing it, you might spend a lot more time than that. Anywhere from 3 hours to 1 week if you're working with a designer to get those designs finalized. And then launching the book and creating the strategy should take a few hours. Ideally, your launch team is starting from the beginning, but in terms of organizing and coordinating with your launch team, that could take a few hours. So I have some fun math here on the board. And so in terms of the average book, it's between 50 and 100,000 words. If you have a really good mind map and a really good outline, you'll be able to type at about 25 words per minute if you're a fast typer and you have no problem getting the idea to go from your mind through your hands if you're referencing a good outline. So for me, I can type at about 100 words per minute if I'm typing fast, if I know what I'm typing. I'm basically copying something else. So because you can't type that fast, that'd be awesome if you can type out a book at 100 words a minute. I'd say reasonably for me, it's about 25 words per minute that I can type. So if you're writing a book between 50 and 100,000 words at 25 words per minute, it's most likely going to take you 45 hours of typing. Now, that's about 120 hours of total work to do everything from the idea all the way down to publishing. That's about 120 hours of work. If you're on the faster side of things, if you're a little bit slower and you're taking more time, which is totally fine, it might take you 3 or 4 months. But the topic of this video is how do you self-publish a book in less than 30 days? And if you follow this outline and you actually follow the steps that we talked about in terms of time allocation and thinking things through, 120 hours means 4 hours per day, for 30 days. If you're doing 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, or 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night, and then on the weekend, you're just gonna grind and you're gonna put in 6 to 10 hours of working on your book, you'll get it done in 3 or 4 weeks, all the way from idea to launching. Now, before you guys go, I have 5 pieces of advice, and these are just my personal experience after writing this book. And fun fact, I've actually already started writing another book, so hopefully by the time you watch this, I will have already published it, but it's I'm in this stage right now, in the very, very early stages. Tip number 1 is schedule your book writing time. This is so important, to have an allocated period of time in the morning, in the afternoon. Put it on your calendar if you have to. Hold yourself accountable. Tell other people so that way they don't annoy you during this time. Hey, I'm writing a book every single morning from 9 to 10 a.m. I'm only writing. I'm not worrying about anything else. Or maybe it's every Saturday from 8 to 12, every Sunday from 8 to 12, every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Have a schedule and just stick with it. That's what it takes. You gotta stick with it. It's like working out. You gotta have a schedule and stick with it. Tip number 2 is focus on writing to one person, one persona. I mentioned personas. It's very easy for me, for example, with my swimming book, to write to beginner swimmers, elite swimmers, triathletes, people who are trying to lose weight. And instead, you really want to zero in on what type of person are you actually writing this book to. The message is going to be so much cleaner, and it's going to be so much faster for you to actually write the book because you know who you're trying to communicate with. That's really important. Tip number 3 is don't over edit while you write. I already mentioned it. You want to be able to just spew words onto the page once you've created a great outline. You already have a great outline, so you don't need to edit that much because you're just putting information in a coherent way. And even if it's not that coherent, doesn't matter. Done is better than perfect. It's so important to just keep moving chapter by chapter by chapter. Tip number 4, there it is. Done is better than perfect. So you got to get out of the weeds. Don't be fancy. It's very easy to think, oh, what if I insert this quote here? And what if I do that at the very, very end, once you've written the entire book and you just want to push through? Because after you get through the first couple of chapters, it's going to be a slog. It's a grind. You're trying to make it happen. You're so close. Finish that book. Just get it done. Don't get in the weeds. You are going to get slow in the middle, and you're going to be in this valley of death where you may not finish. And you just got to keep pushing, and the most success you will have is if you don't stay in the weeds. Done is better than perfect. And finally, tip number 5 is to just get started. I have it here under tip number 6 or step 6. Just do it. Just write the book. There's no better time than the present. When I announced that I was writing a book, I had literally done 0. I actually made a YouTube video. Maybe I'll link it here. It's so important to take those first steps. Announce to the world what you're doing. Don't be shy. Acknowledge the fact that you may not know everything. Even if you're not an expert, you are an expert to the people that you're trying to help. So keep that in mind. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. I really appreciate the support. Check out the links down below for additional resources. And if you want to take your ideas to the next level, start a business, invest in business, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and keep hustling. Bye. Peace.